Hi, and welcome to worship today. I'm glad that you've joined us. Two announcements that are very important. One, on January 23rd, we will begin the Sunday school program, which will be grades K through 2 at 3 p.m. at Sunday evenings, grades 3 through 4 at 4 p.m., and then grades 6 through 9 will be at 6 p.m. So I hope that you can join us for that. If you are in that age group, it's on Zoom, so you don't need to be necessarily a member of this church or someone who can physically get to the church. You can certainly join from anywhere in the world, which would be wonderful to have people outside of Michigan. But that's just my hope and dream. We'll leave it there. If you're watching, something to think about. January 30th, we will have our congregational meeting that will be in person at the church immediately following the service. Very important, we cover our budget at that meeting, and we look at new council members and who might be able to serve. So if you know someone who might serve, certainly come to me, or if you might encourage them, or name them at the meeting, which is sometimes meaner than it might be. So with all that, let us begin with the Gospel according to Luke. And glory to you, O Lord. Actually, it's according to John. The Gospel according to John. And glory to you, O Lord. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone jars of water for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. And Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." And so they took it to him. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. The Gospel of the Lord, and praise to you, O Christ. Grace and peace to you, dearly beloved, from the source of justice. Jumping the broom. It was the first time I had heard of it. The bride wanted to jump the broom with her future husband. They would have the ceremony, say their vows, finish all the stuff that's in the wedding, and then jump a broom. And I didn't know the meaning of jumping the broom. See, the first wedding I did really threw me into the deep end. It was for an African-American couple, and I was quickly confronted with traditions I did not know or had experienced. I had no idea that there were cultural divisions to ceremonies that we, or maybe just I, have expectations of. And so the steward turns to the bridegroom and says, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Clearly, the cultural division, clearly a cultural division the steward had not predicted. The good wine second, saved for after the town had had its fill. It didn't make sense to him, like jumping a broom. It was a divide that I did not get. A response to marriage in slavery, a response to illegal marriage. What world would forbid marriage? Forbid it as though it is evil. There was a divide so obvious that it needed to be named, a divide that kept kids in separate schools and water for different lips and churches that judged who could have their love bound together. Justice is not justice if it is not equally just. And so they marched, peacefully walking down the sidewalks until they were arrested for an unlawful protest. Martin Luther King Jr. marched in peaceful protest, but was met with violence, hate, disgust, and judgment. And so King wrote, "While confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling our present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom, if ever, do I pause to answer criticisms of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all of my criticisms that crossed my desk, my secretaries would be engaged in little else in the course of the day, and I would have no time for constructive work. But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill and your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I would like to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. So let's make sure we've got this clear. King is addressing pastors. It was clergy who thought he had overstepped his point, but who he now, in a non-anxious presence, seeks to clear the air. And so King continues, "My friends, I must say to you that we have not made a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and non-violent pressure. History is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. Individuals may see the moral light and voluntarily give up their unjust posture, but Reinhold Niebuhr has reminded us groups are more immoral than individuals." And if you haven't noticed yet, Lutherans are a bit entangled in this difficult situation. Way back in 1934, Michael King, an African-American Baptist preacher, changed his name to Martin Luther King. He did this after learning about Martin Luther. And also now we have Niebuhr referenced, a Lutheran theologian. Martin Luther King Jr. is putting us who name ourselves Lutheran, who name ourselves Christian, putting us in a hot seat. And so King continues, "We know there through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I have never yet engaged in direct action movement that was well-timed according to the timetable of those who have not yet suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I have heard the word wait." Wait, Mary says. They have no wine. An occasion of celebration, an occasion of family and friends and communities coming together, they have no wine. It's ill-timed, not convenient, a moment of shock. What does this really mean? And I'd always heard that it's a phrase that Mary asked Jesus, or came to Jesus, asking him to fix the problem. I'd always heard this from the perspective of the fix-it. But what if it's not? What if it is simply Mary being shocked by the situation? What if this shock is a call to action? We find ourselves waiting for instructions, waiting to know what Jesus says, waiting as though we are the ones creating the miracles. Jesus turns and leans over to the servants. Jesus creates the miracles. Fill the jars with water. Something so simple and yet so poorly timed. They have things to do. It's not like they're standing around. It's inconvenient. And so King continues, "I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the last few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that people of color's great stumbling block in the stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with the methods of your direct action, who paternalistically feel that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises the person of color to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." And so the servants take the water to the steward. They realize their role. They fill the jars, they take the water, take it knowing what has just happened. Jesus performs the miracle, but it is the action, and it is the action of the servants that reveal it. Reveal God's outpouring of love, God's coming in humility, God's divine love for us that inspires us to give ourselves in loving relationships. Loving relationships on full display as we watch and encourage and join the broom being jumped. Full display as the oppressed find ways of walking down the sidewalk, finding ways of marriage without permission, finding ways of serving the best wine last. Jesus came to this world to save it from missing the mark. And over, we fail to love as we should. We judge where we might embrace. We criticize when we could listen. We miss the mark when our neighborhoods look sideways at multicultural families. We miss the mark when our friends speak out of fear. We miss the mark when what is just stands before us and we choose what is convenient. Love came to the world. Love made known in the person of Jesus. Jesus, who died on that cross, rose to life, ascended to heaven to plead for our sin. Who forgives us when our souls are clouded and sorrow overwhelms us, when we wait for a more convenient time. Only as dynamic examples of God's image in the world can we have real wholeness. Carry the message to others. Jump that broom. God came to this world so that we might know justice that leaves us uncomfortable. And so we must be more than a place of welcome. We must discover God's image in others. God comes to us as the image of God. God comes to us as love. God comes to us with a simple command: take the water to the steward. Amen.